Welcome, District 10 Toastmasters, fellow Toastmasters members, and guests. Today is the day we have all been waiting for. We kick off the 2023 District 10 Hybrid Conference. Registration begins at 5 p.m. Do you feel the excitement like we do? The theme chosen by the conference team is Level Up District 10. The team took that name very seriously and they incorporated it into every stage of the conference, even when they were planning for the keynote speaker for our conference. It's my honor today to interview our keynote speaker for the conference, an immediate past international president of Toastmasters International, Richard E. Peck, DTM. Richard has been a Toastmaster since 2006. From 2020 to 2021, Richard served as the Toastmasters International President. Currently, he is an officer of the Toastmasters International Board of Directors and a working ambassador for the organization. His role is to develop, support, and modify the policies and procedures that guide Toastmasters International in fulfilling its mission. Richard, we're so thrilled to have you here as our keynote speaker for the District 10 2023 Hybrid Conference. Thank you for being here and for giving us the opportunity to learn from you.
Oh, my pleasure, Kathleen. I'm looking forward to the interview and seeing what you have in store for me.
Okay. Read in an article by Stephanie Darling that was published in 2020 in edition of the Toastmasters magazine that you are a lifetime learner. What does lifetime learner mean to you?
That's a great question. I think lifetime learner for me, and we probably all have our own definition of it, but is someone who is continuously learning new things, continuously trying to improve upon where they are now to move to the next step. I think oftentimes we get stuck in we know, right? And that's where we end up at. But the world changes so quickly. Everything around us evolves. And we as individuals need to evolve our leadership and learning skills with that. My philosophy is the one thing in life no one can ever take away from you is what you learn. Everything else they can, but what you learn is specific to you. So that's why I continue to find new ways to challenge myself, to learn new things, to make myself a better citizen of this world.
Very true. Well, very good. You're also quoted in the article as saying, when I first joined Toastmasters, I quickly learned that I could talk, but I couldn't communicate. For those of us who may not be Toastmasters members yet, tell us more about that and how Toastmasters help you become a better communicator.
It's an interesting quote, speak versus communicate. And I think we all think we communicate because words are coming out of our mouth and we think maybe people are understanding what we're saying. Communication is so much more than that, though. Communication is the words you say, how you say them, your body language, your facial expressions. I mean, think about it. If someone was to say to you, Kathleen, I'm having a great day. Are you really going to believe that that person is having a great day? They've spoken to you. They haven't feeling they communicated since it's just a rotten day. If someone comes up to you with a big smile and says, hey, Kathleen, I'm having a really great day. I'm looking forward to this interview. That communicates a different message. And every time we speak to someone, every time we interact, communication is the message. Our bodies, our voices are the vessel to get them there. But we have to put it all together. You know, stories about, yeah, I caught this really big fish. It's not the same as I caught this really big fish. And we need to make sure that we communicate.
Yes. When did you decide to pursue the office of president for Toastmasters International?
I didn't.
You didn't?
And I've been asked that question before.
Were you
about
told?
I went out and I came back. So to be honest with you, I never saw myself as taking a leadership role within the organization. And I think a lot of us are in that position. We all want to take on communication roles, learn to be better speakers and better communicators. And we don't necessarily let the journey take us. We try to take the journey. And I started out in club leadership, and that was great. It's a great place to get your feet wet and learn about what it's about. And then started working my way through the trio, the senior leadership team, your directors. At the same time, I was going for my master's degree in international business, and I took a course on cultural awareness, a global look. And I realized that when my term as a member of the senior team had come to an end, that I had much more that I felt I could give the organization from that global perspective. And at that point was when I decided to run for the board of directors. I don't know that when you're on the board of directors in the first 2 years, you consider, hey, I'm going to be the president, or you're going to serve that term out. My 2-year term as director turned out, and I felt there was still more that I could give. So that's why I ran on to be an international officer. People often will ask me, though, how do I become international president? And my advice to those individuals is don't try to be the international president. Be the best leader you can be now and succeed there. Because if you're too forward focused, you miss what you're supposed to be doing now. And there becomes that gap. So be the best leader you can be now. Let the journey go where it's going to go. And if you're meant to be there, you'll be there.
Very good. Well, you served as the president of Toastmasters International towards the beginning of the pandemic, correct? What, besides the normal challenges that people face just being in a leadership role, what additional challenges did the pandemic bring to your role as president?
Yeah, so I actually took the office of president in the heart of the pandemic. It had started in March. I took the office in August, so we were deep in it at that point. I think the biggest challenges that I faced, or that the organization faced, and I say that because you're in the leadership position over the organization, but the organization is facing it, right? And it was going from an organization where everyone was meant to be together, high fives, handshakes, all that, to having to be so socially apart. And I don't like the term social distancing. We're still social people. We were physically distanced at that point. But how do you, as an organization, shift to meet that need? And what does it look like? Now, our members, I have great appreciation for what they did. They managed to figure out ways to shift the organization very quickly. But there was still so much unknown. And you can get all the leadership skills, all the development you want, but nobody can ever prepare you for a global pandemic and leading an organization through that. And it meant that we had to change the way we view things, because what always worked wasn't going to work anymore. What always worked, you might as well just throw that playbook away and find new ways to stay connected. And I think it had some positive sides to where we knew we could overcome. And it shortened the size of the globe, if you will, because now people could join from a club meeting from anywhere. And for me, it was such a thrill to get evaluated by someone that I never thought I'd be evaluated from on the other side of the country. And our clubs have started embracing that as well.
Also, not too long before the pandemic, Toastmasters made a huge change to its educational program with Pathways. So that was rolling out and people were just getting used to that. Now you have the pandemic and everything. How did your project manager experience help you in your role as president of Toastmasters International?
I think project management skills are great for everybody to have at least some level of them, because you have to understand that everything in our organization is timeline based, right? We go from July 1st to June 30th, and you need to figure out where everything plays into that. On a global scale, it's how do you make sure that programs are rolled out in a timely manner? How do you make sure that dashboards are updated? How do you make sure the communication is going out? And you can't just fling it out there and hope it's going to work. You have to really look at it, detail it out, and make sure that the messages going out are the same, that they're going out in the right manner. Too oftentimes, things get through a rumor mill before the message actually gets out there, and then an idea is formed about what that rumor mill had to say. That rumor mill may not ever be right, but it's already out there. Think about, maybe you played this when you were growing up. Did you ever play telephone when you were growing up, right? So everybody talks the message down the line, but by the time it gets to the end, it's never the same message as what started out. And unfortunately, grapevines are the same way. So making sure we avoided that and got our information out properly.
And have you thought, with all your lifetime learning, with all the learning that you've had, experiences, that you would ever write a book?
So I've written one that has recently come out on public speaking. It's called Poking the Cadaver, a forensics approach to public speaking.
Okay.
So I work with a forensic expert, and we've taken speeches and applied forensic principles to them to say, okay, the speech didn't go well. Where in the forensic analysis did it fall apart? Because really that's what we should be doing. So that's worked out well for us. The cadaver is obviously your dead speech. It's on a slab somewhere. How do we revive it? The two other books I'd like to write is one is In the Driver's Seat, and it's leadership lessons from drag racing, because I am a licensed drag racer, and you are a leader by yourself, but you have to rely on your team. So how do you lead in that position? And the other one is my memoir that I want to write, just call me Richard, because we've gotten too hung up on titles. And no one's going to remember my title, they need to remember me. Right. So it doesn't matter what your leadership role is, you have to be true to who you are. And when people ask me how they should recognize me, just call me Richard. That's it. Simple.
Do you have any books with you that were just released, or
I do not.
are they hot off the presses?
Yeah, they're a few months old. They're on Amazon. I didn't bring anything with me. That's really not why I'm at the conference. It's a different feel for me if I'm doing that. For me, I just want to be here and do the best I can for our district and our members.
And who was the biggest influence to you in your career?
Oh, my career. Now that's a tough question. I would say possibly the biggest influence would have been a previous director when I worked for AT&T, who gave me the first opportunity to serve in leadership. I think influence is kind of a different thing to judge. It's, in my opinion, who gives you the greatest opportunity. Because if you have an opportunity given to you, it's up to you to do one of two things. Take advantage of it and develop it to your benefits, or waste it. And oftentimes we are given opportunities and we waste them, regardless of how influential a person is.
That's very true. What leadership skills should we look to develop if we're looking for a leadership role, whether it's president of a club, president of Toastmasters International, et cetera, on the board of directors? What type of leadership skills should we look to develop?
I'll tell you what I consider to be the primary skill to look for is that you have to develop the skill to ask for help. For leaders, we have this thought in the back of our head that we can't ask for help because it's a sign of weakness. We were elected to a position, we were appointed to a position, you're the leader, you should know this. That is a really negative philosophy to have if you think you can ask for help. For me, a wise leader is the one who asks for help because they know what their strengths are, they know what their limits are, and they've been able to identify what areas of improvement they need. So if you're going to be a leader, the first thing you need to know is you can ask for help and when to do it.
Very good. As president of Toastmasters International, or what you have done in your when you were a project manager for AT&T, how did you struggle to maintain a healthy life balance, work-life balance? Was that a struggle for you when you were when you traveled so much, especially?
Is there a balance? I think it goes this way one day, this way the next day. Eventually it comes to it is difficult to figure that out. I think it's especially hard for leaders to find proper balance when they are so dedicated and so passionate about what they're doing, to the point where they put so much of their time, so much of their energy into it, that it doesn't necessarily allow for the balance. Now, for some, it might be, I'm only in this leadership role for a short period of time. I'm going to give it my all because when I'm out of this leadership role, now my personal life comes back up. And there's that balance that will hopefully come into play because the one will go down on the other side. I will tell you, though, that it becomes a risk, and that you can find yourself in some very dark places And I mean that from a mental perspective, because think about if you're a leader, you're siloed, you're alone, you don't feel that you have any help. Things aren't working out well for you. There's no outlet there. The only thing that's going on is the voices in your head, which are getting louder and louder, and causing you to doubt yourself more. And then it becomes very detrimental to you as a leader, because you'll start falling into that path, and then you're not someone who asks for help. The balance goes totally the wrong way. And so figuring all that out it can be a challenge sometimes.
So the pendulum swifts to the other side swiftly,
It
quickly.
can swing very, very quickly. Think about when we had to transition from in-person to online as a result of the pandemic. If you were used to being in the office on a regular basis, and now all of a sudden you were cut off from everybody who you were used to having water cooler conversations with, talks over lunch with, the mental shift was harsh, because you had to adapt so quickly to something you had no idea what to do with. And now you add leadership on top of that, and it can be to that point where it's overwhelming.
Now I'd like to ask you a fun question. What have you done this year or plan to do this year to level up?
I was waiting for that level up question. Well, maybe you'll have to wait till tomorrow. Notice me to see what I'm going to do to level up. I think it's a great question, because that's something we should be doing every day, is thinking about how we level up to the next step. And that's what we were talking about, the lifelong learning earlier. Every day I learn something new. It helps me to level up to the next. I've been delaying not a career shift, but something that I like to do to augment in my career for too long, because I've been putting a lot of my heart and soul into what I'm doing right now. In August, when that starts to shift a little bit, then I'll be starting to go back and refocus my energies on that area, which should help me level up later on this year.
What have you loved most about traveling, or do you love traveling?
Oh, I love traveling.
You don't love traveling.
I love traveling. If I had a permanent seat on a plane, I'd be happy. It wouldn't matter. What do I love about traveling is I think that for me, traveling is not about being a tourist. Traveling is about exposing myself to new cultures, new ways of seeing things, new ways of doing things. So let me explain to you a little bit more about what I mean by that, because you say, well, you're traveling to a different country, you're a tourist. Okay. I don't like to stay when I'm traveling in tourist areas. Okay. Tourist resorts, go to the 5-star restaurants, those type of things. The reason I don't like to do that when I travel is because if you're catering to me because I'm a tourist, you're catering to me the same way I could be living at home. Right? For me, it's about going to the places that locals would go for, experiencing things differently, as if you were new, just dropped into that environment. You see so much more that way that you wouldn't see if you're just staying in a comfortable environment like you have at home. And I've been in Singapore, and I've eaten in hawker centers, which are where locals would get their food made for them. And I had better food there than I had in the 3- and 4-star restaurants I was eating at. But I think that's the only way you truly learn about the country you're visiting, is by being in the country.
And one final question.
Sure.
If you could tell us one thing about yourself that nobody else knew, what would it be? What could you tell us, something that maybe you don't usually share?
There's probably a lot of things that I don't share, but I'm sure they're on Facebook.
We'll find that we wouldn't know about you. Let's say, let's put it that way instead.
So I have an idea for a cookbook in mind. I was talking to Bob Wheat, we're going to interview later about that. I think something there might come up. Both my kitchens at my home, both my indoor kitchen and my outdoor kitchen, were designed for me, because I'm the person who likes to cook at home. My wife is a fabulous designer, took everything that I wanted to have put in place and designed it out for me. So that's one of those things that I like to do. It'd be great to be back home and being able to take some time and do some cooking again. And I like to cook international foods. Now, for me, it's always great, right? I followed the recipe, it came out perfect. But I'll never know unless I invite somebody who's familiar with that cuisine, whether it really is good or not. And I'm afraid to do that because it may not be as good as I think it is. So that's one of those fun things. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure your wife appreciates all the cooking that you do.
She's a good cook as well. She's a very good cook.
Well, thank you so much again for allowing us to interview you and talk with you. And we're so excited about your keynote speech tomorrow. Also, tonight is the fireside chat starting around 7:05 p.m. So I hope that you catch it, and we can't wait to hear from you.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. It was a
Thank you.
pleasure. Pleasure. Thank you.